Hello and welcome to the CodCast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Matt.
Matt, we've had a few shareholder questions saying sort of what's going on with the flowsheet work that we're doing and just asking what we're up to. And as always, it's that between Newsflow times that I guess the CodCast is so useful because we can get on there and say to you what we're doing and why we're so busy. So I thought I'd put the man responsible for the work in the chair, and shareholders can eyeball you, Matt, and have a few questions. And obviously, as always, info@codaminerals.com. But just to summarise where we're at, we obviously have ongoing PFS work, which we'll talk about in a minute. Mm. We have a base case flow sheet. That flow sheet is based on flotation and an Albion circuit. It's one that we're taking through into PFS for sure. But we announced something very exciting, which is this alternative flow sheet, which is based on a whole ore leach. Mm-hmm. Should be simpler, should be lower CAPEX, involves tank leach rather than flotation and an Albion. And we've had great results so far. To say, very fair question, by the way, sort of like what's involved in this? Because it is taking a little bit of time, and I think the time is a usual amount of time, and you're going to explain what that involves. But again, I thought it'd be a really good opportunity to get on the CodCast and just talk about what we're doing. So again, bear in mind, we've got our flotation flow sheet. We are working on this whole ore leaching flow sheet. We've put some initial numbers out. What are we doing? What next?
We are redesigning the flow sheet to some extent, but we are actually benefiting a lot from that earlier base case that you talked about, in that all of our back end, all of our, the actual producing of the copper, the actual producing of the cobalt, that carries over. What's actually changing is the front end. So we're taking out the flotation plant and we're taking out the Albion and a few other bits and pieces that go along with that.
I should say looking at taking it out.
Yeah.
This is an alternative.
That's true.
We'll take 2 through into PFS, right?
Yeah, the work that we're doing now involves redesigning that flow sheet, but we haven't decided ultimately which one is going to go forward into, well, the final PFS.
Yeah, and it's a fair question because I've had a few sort of fun meetings recently. I've been doing a lot of Zooms, and we were in Sydney a couple of weeks ago, and there's been that question, almost a bit of confusion, which is, okay, what's going on? What's wrong with the current flow sheet? And the answer is nothing.
Yeah, no, the current flow sheet works. It gave us the
802 post-tax.
Yep. So that it works. Yep. What we're trying to do, obviously, is make it better.
Yeah.
And so, take out the float, take out the Albion, and replace them with a whole ore leach. Now, that is a simpler process, but it takes a certain amount of time to develop it. There is a lot of individual eccentricities associated with the specific pathway that you choose, no matter which pathway you choose. I mean, flotation has its things, and so does chloride leaching.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before on the CodCast. I hate it when juniors put out half-baked information, tests done, tiny scale, in the lab, 1 or 2 tests, not proper composites, Perth tap water, not site, all of this stuff. We're not doing that.
No, we're going through as much as we can and making sure it's as robust as we can make it. But obviously it takes time. And the two big areas that take time to finalise it, number one is the fact that you have to do a lot of those tests to optimise your actual flow sheet, figure out what reagents to add, in what concentrations, when in the process, how long you leave it in the tanks. So all of that, there's quite a lot of just individual tests to do.
Yeah, it's an iterative process as well.
Yeah, exactly. You try it one way, it doesn't quite work the way you want, you tweak it, try it another way.
Yeah.
And part of that also involves optimizing on an individual commodity basis.
Yeah.
So one particular choice might work better for copper, but not work as well for cobalt. Or you might decide, well, we can extend this residence time out 4x and get more copper or more cobalt or whatever it is, but we've already gotten 96% of it, and extending it out only gains you a few percent at the cost of whatever the cost is. And in doing that maths, essentially, you hone in on what the most optimal flow sheet is. Yeah,
and Katrina, who doesn't love the camera, but she does love the spreadsheets, and has been, there's, in operations research terms, there's dozens of choice variables. Your objective function, the thing you're trying to do is maximize value.
Yeah, dollars in, dollars out.
Every time, if you halve the residence time, you effectively half the size or number of tanks that you need. So that has big capital implications. And as you say, there's a lot of things. You change one thing. So there's a bit of an iterative process. You've also got the assay labs.
Well, yeah, I mean, the problem with the iterative process is every step takes as long as it takes. I mean, the residence time's between 8 and 24 hours, but in between, every time you pull it out of the tank, you have to filter it, sample it, dry it, do all those steps. And then, of course, once you submit it to the assay lab, it's the same as a drill hole assay. You know, it's
Exactly
2 or
same,
3
yeah.
weeks unless you expedite it,
Which
we do when it's critical path, when it's actually going to speed along the process. But even then, turnaround time a week, generally speaking.
Yes.
So often we're still moving forward, we're still doing things,
Yeah.
but you can't move on to the next critical path step until you've got those assays, and then you move on. So it takes a certain amount of time.
Right. Now, before anyone panics, this is we're not going to be practicing around the lab until 2029. This is very well advanced. We obviously put out a significant amount of information already.
Yep.
The next bit is the CAPEX, OPEX estimation and finalising, obviously, the optimisation you just talked about. What are the timings on this?
I think the last thing we put into the market was in the quarterly.
Yes.
Said it was going to come out this quarter, and we're still very much on track to do that.
Now, for the avoidance of doubt, we're not playing golf in between waiting for assay results. Let's talk about what we have been doing, which is really sort of that early stage PFS work.
My priority, and I mean, maybe it's because I'm a geo, but my priority is the drilling.
Yep.
So much flows from that.
Yes.
We can't do our geotech unless we have core. We can't do our next stage metallurgy unless we have sample. So the drilling really does stand as the next hurdle, the next milestone. And so we're prioritizing getting rigs in the field. And that means obviously, the really straightforward stuff like sending out RFQs to drillers. We've done that. We've got our environmental consultants working on an e-pepper, and Tim is, I believe, heading up to Port Augusta on Thursday, if memory serves, to talk to the TOs and arrange a heritage survey and doing all the stuff that you need to do to get into the field.
Yep. So drill planning advanced. We've had the hydros in the field.
Yeah. We've had the hydros helping us identify where we need to put our monitoring bores both for bore fields long term, making sure we've got enough water to support the program, and also for environmental monitoring.
Yeah.
It's part of the long lead data collection you need for your eventually for your pepper.
Yes. So, I mean, obviously drilling's important. That leads to a huge amount of news flow. You've got resource updates. You've got, obviously, eventually maiden reserve and changes in production targets. A lot of the flow sheet work we're doing, as I say, it's not on the critical path. It's not holding anything up. So that's all going on in the background while we're also advancing the PFS. Sounds like we're pretty catalyst rich for the first time in a while. I keep using that phrase, and it's great to feel like you've got met results, you've got CAPEX, OPEX, you've got obviously commencement of all the drilling work, you've got resource updates coming. There's a whole bunch of stuff over the next period, which is pretty exciting.
Also approvals. We submitted our early stage environmental approvals to the government. That should be coming back in the not too distant. Allow us to really start that process that leads eventually to a mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing I love about it, because you hear me use the phrase scope, plan and budget a lot, is that it is a effectively binding scope plan. The budget's in the background, but scope and plan with the South Australian DEM. And forms all the scope of what we have to do, and it's really nice because we are able to track against that.
It'll give us all of our milestones, all of our specifics that they want, and we should know very early on whether we're going to run into trouble or not. And you've been out there. I don't think there's too many things that are going to cause us too much trouble.
As I always say, it will not be easy because it never is, but it will be as easy as it gets, and that is a very good thing for Elizabeth Creek. Another shareholder comment I had recently, which was actually really useful, was someone sending me kind of a much more granular way that the one company in particular, I think it was a Canadian company, was attacking their explanation of what they're doing and the approvals. And I think it's something that we'll take on board. I love the CodCast. I like being able to communicate this with shareholders, but just getting a bit more granular and just explaining in a bit more detail exactly all the steps that we're going through, because it is an enormous amount of work going on. And I think we do need to do better to explain it to you guys, like, honestly. So, the CodCast is great. We get 200, 300, 400 views on this. But again, explaining it to the wider audience is important as well.
Yeah, especially since a lot of shareholders either aren't necessarily in the mining industry or aren't at this part of the mining industry.
Yes.
If you've worked on a mine for 20 years, that you may well be an expert in your area, but it doesn't mean you know how that mine got there in the first place.
No, absolutely true. And I guess this is the area that both of us have a lot of experience in, and I personally find very energizing, partly because it makes the company Catalyst rich and partly because it's just really interesting work. Exciting to be a part of this right now. We are hard at work getting Newsflow. We are finalising this work, and I think we do need to do better today's a good start, but we do need to do better in explaining what's going on behind the scenes as well. So if you got this far, thank you very much. And as always, info@codaminerals.com if you have any questions. Thanks, everyone.
So,
Cheers.